would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name's Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California and member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. Welcome to Friday, everyone. I hope it's been a good week for you. It's always weird coming back from a vacation. Spent the first chunk of this week actually out with the kids camping, so that was a good time. I hope you all are able to stay on task with your goals, whatever they might be. I know I do plug this an awful lot, but if you're not using the Google Calendar app on your phone, let me suggest you give it a try. It's a great way to keep track of goals and let them shift given how your schedule changes. Give it a test drive. I think it'll be worth your time, and it's totally free. And I don't get any kickbacks. It's not a moneymaker for me. This is strictly just the best tool I've come across to keep you on target in terms of your goals are concerned. As we talked about yesterday, I had a conversation with someone about taking those first steps. What holds you back from making those first steps into taking on something like real estate investing, whatever other goals you might have. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit today. I'm not gonna have it take up the whole show, but just a few minutes on it because I thought it was an interesting conversation, and I'm not sure how crucial it is for people to hear this kind of stuff, but it sure does seem to be the place where if someone's not going to take that next step towards their goal, it's this. I mean, this seems to be the big blockade for folks. So I thought I'd share some thoughts, and if it helps some people, great. If other folks are already beyond it, apologies for wasting your time, but hopefully it just reinforces everyone's dedication towards moving their goals, whatever they might be. If you'd like to get in contact with me, there's a variety of ways to do that. The best way is through the website, www.therebelbroker.com. I would like to thank those of you who have participated in the survey that gives a nice analysis of sort of the folks in my audience. And it's one of the next big steps in helping me take the show to the next level. And if you could take a minute out of your day to participate, if you haven't already, please head on over to www.therebelbroker.com. There's a big red button at the top of the front page that says take the survey to support the show. Please do that. It's 5 to 7 questions. It's just really a way to figure out sort of the demographics of the audience, and you would be doing the show a huge, huge favor. So I appreciate you taking the time out to do that. That there is a goal number of how many folks to take the survey, and we're not really horribly close to the number I need yet. So just keep plugging away. I really appreciate the time you take to support the show. So let's go ahead and jump right into sort of the motivational thing first. And I'm not a Tony Robbins guy. I've never understood the short-term mental payoff of walking on hot coals at the end of one of those motivational days. For me, it's the long game. It's easy to crank up Eye of the Tiger at a meeting and get everybody roaring for the next step, and then realize that 5 or 6 steps out of that office, that's all poof, it's gone. For me, it's more about focusing on the core things that stand opposed to you. And 9 times out of 10, the things that stand opposed to you reaching your goals are not out there from other sources. They're internal things. They're things that you personally need to overcome. And I was having a conversation with someone, this was probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, and they were really interested in making those first steps. And I think one thing that's very common is the paralysis of analysis, right? You don't want to make a wrong decision. And I guess you could make the argument that taking an action is better than no action at all. Even if it ends up being something that doesn't pan out quite the way you like, at least you learn from it. You learn, that failing isn't that bad. It's almost like when you were a kid, and I don't know if everyone's gone through this, but, if you were the kid who got picked on and never stood up for yourself, it's like that first time you do stand up for yourself and you get your butt kicked. And once it's all over, you realize, you know what? Getting your butt kicked isn't good, but it's not that bad either. You know, you might have a couple of bruises. You might walk away with a bloody nose or a black eye, but you know, that stuff after a few days, it's gone. And hopefully you got it doing the right thing, standing up for yourself or standing up for someone else who's being picked on, whatever it might be. So it's okay to get a bloody nose. It's okay to get a black eye. Because I think as you do those things, you realize, you know, when the bad stuff happens, it's not really as bad as I envisioned it. And one thing that someone had said to me was that, this really kind of blew my mind. They said, I just wish I was courageous enough. I wish I had the courage to do it. I admire these people who just have no fear. And this may be a trite cliche, but courage isn't the absence of fear. You know, all the bravest guys in the world, whether they've got medals on their chest to show it or just the bruises from the experience, they're going to tell you they did a brave thing, not in the absence of fear. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the acceptance of fear and persisting anyway, right? So if you're looking for this scenario where you're not afraid, and that is 100% what you need out of life, you may be listening to the wrong show. I've kind of adopted a mantra, I don't know how long ago, but at some point, I decided if I'm not just a little bit afraid all the time, I'm not doing it right. There's something to be said for being just outside of the parameters of your comfort zone. And I get that for some people that's a very narrow band and for those folks, maybe that 9-to-5 job with really good medical and dental and vision coverage, and you know, where you punch a clock and you get there in the morning and you know exactly how many hours you worked, maybe, and that might be what is your happy place. And there's nothing wrong with that. But again, but if you're that person and you just kind of like to keep track of the ins and outs of what's going on with real estate and interesting news that goes around the periphery of it, and you like hearing about things relating to investing in real estate, buying it, selling it, doing different things with it, great, you're in the right place. But if you're someone who pines to get a little bit more freedom, to have a little bit more financial independence, you need to fall in love with fear a little bit, I think, or at least adjust your attitude relating to it, and realize that you know, the best way. I had one guy say, you know, he felt untested in terms of how brave he was relating to things to take on. Well, what better way to prove that to yourself than to put yourself in situations where you're forced to face scary things? That's when it gets tested, right? It's not when you talk about it or think about it. It's when you take actions that put you into circumstances where you're doing something that scares you a little bit. So I'm gonna hope that all of you understand that no matter who you're looking at as someone you're saying, God, you know, this guy I know, I've known him since college, didn't seem any smarter than me, but look at him. He's out there, he's doing all this stuff and he's doing well, and he's got this sort of freedom that I wish I had. He more or less works for himself, and I just wish that I had that in me. And you know, the reality is you do. There nothing you can tell me about things you think are personal limitations on you aren't things I've seen in very successful real estate investors. Because here's the secret that I think most folks don't want you to know. I've met just as many morons who have made a ton of money in investing in real estate as I've met morons in anything else. Super smart people aren't any more represented in the world of real estate investing than any other discipline. By and large, in fact, you could argue that the quote-unquote smart folks who really, really overthink stuff succeed less Because here's the other truth. You can follow some pretty basic formulas, and if you just blindly follow them and continually are willing to take on the risk associated with them, you're likely to enjoy some success. Learn a few basic rules. You don't have to be super smart. I know plenty, and I don't know if you equate smart with a college degree. I think there's a big difference between being educated and being smart. Just from my experience with people who have been educated and who aren't so smart. And so whether it was people concerned that they weren't brave enough, or people concerned they weren't smart enough, or people concerned that they simply didn't have enough money to get started. The only one in there in that list that might be semi-valid is the I don't have any money thing, because that can clearly be a problem. But then you get into the overcoming that. That's an overcomable problem, right? Just like any other one is. Whether that means bringing in partners or whatever else. And we've talked about that before. But it's just interesting to me the things that folks lay out. And probably the final thing I would say is, if you want to really be successful, you need to stop thinking in terms of, what that guy did prevented me from being successful. This individual really made it hard for me. That guy made it tough for me. This circumstance made it impossible for me to achieve my goal. None of that is beneficial. Whether it's true, I'm not going to argue whether it's true or not, but none of it is beneficial. You need to reduce all of those kinds of obstacles into strategies for you to overcome them. And in order for you to do that, you have to own them. So it's that guy's fault that I didn't succeed needs to become, I was unable to see what this guy was really up to. How do I learn from that? And in the next deal, be aware of that possibility, right? Own it. Own the solution. Don't simply delegate the solution to the universe by saying, well, it was this other guy's thing. He did his thing and screwed me and I'm done. No, you have to own it. And by and large, the folks that I see be really successful out there, no matter what you're talking about, are the ones who totally take personal ownership of the elements involved in their success or failure. And can this be super annoying? Yeah. Everything that happens in my life, I look for how I could have modified my actions in order to mitigate that negative thing. And sadly for me, that also translates into everything else, not just business, not just real estate, not just whatever I'm doing, but personal life stuff too. So you sometimes will be that person who takes on the responsibility for absolutely everything and not realizing that a lot of things in your personal life are a team thing. You and your significant other are doing stuff. So that's one downside to it. But I think if you can mentally make a separation, and I've had a little bit of experience with this and a little bit of success in doing it, I think you can find a nice balance in your life. So I guess I'll just leave it there. It's a bummer because it's almost like dad coming and saying, hey, own your own problems, which I find myself saying to my children frequently now that I'm trying to train them to be out on their own. I can't believe my oldest is going to be moving out next year. Blows my freaking mind. So I'm trying to teach him the independence stuff. Again, I won't go into the tall weeds with that. Couldn't be prouder of the kid in terms of how he's taken it, but I think I'm going to have more trouble dealing with it than he is. But anyway, so let's move forward. I wanted to get to calibrate you to a bunch of different metro areas and what salary that you have to be earning to buy a home in these metro areas. The numbers are pretty staggering, and I think if you blend them with other data we've talked about that relate to a lot of these metro areas, you discover that simply because some places are more expensive to buy does not equal more profit for you if you're a buyer who wants to look to invest, either as a renter or as someone who wants to flip a property. And what creeps me out is so often a lot of these articles that I read pointing you in towards different directions in terms of where you should be investing or where the quote unquote hot market is one where when you actually go and do the math, you discover you'd be much better off in terms of return on investment, how much cash you have actually into the property versus how much it earns you after you've taken care of all expenses relating to it. You'd do much better in some totally unheard of places across the country because the return on investment is higher. And while you can absolutely make the argument, well, you're not going to make as much per property. No, you're not. But if I have $1 million of house in Silicon Valley, I've got one house. If I've got $1 million worth of house in Memphis, Tennessee, I've probably got 4 houses. And each one of them is making me more on a return on an investment basis than any of my California properties. And now I've diversified it so that if I lose a renter for some period of time, it doesn't affect my entire income portfolio relating to my holdings of properties, right? So a lot of folks don't make those connections. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to jump in and check out these numbers. We're going to go ahead and jump in and take a look at these and see where the most expensive places are to live in terms of how much salary you need to earn for them in just a second. But first, we're going to take a break, and then we'll be right back to cover that. So stay right there.
Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner, broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909.
Welcome back, everyone. To get us started here, we're getting this data from HSH.com. According to their website, the trusted mortgage source since 1979. And this is covering the salary that you must earn to buy a home in 27 metro areas. And I thought it would be cool to kind of check this out. And I also wanted to share some of their key takeaways that they point out from this article. The first one is, there's also some interesting things to surmise from this list that I thought we could check out. So, and we'll see how far at the list we'll get. We're going to start at the top of the list and kind of work our way down. I'm not sure we'll be able to get through all 27 metros, but I'll put the link to this article in the show notes so you can check it out for yourself. Now, the first key takeaway they indicate from this list is that only 3 metro areas were more affordable during the second quarter. That's kind of interesting, right? So these are areas where things got more affordable, affordability increased, which could be an indication of a slowing marketplace, which is either going to communicate to you it's starting its downturn, or we've got a slight blip in terms of values that may not be permanent. All 3 of these are in the same state, and I think all 3 of these, to some degree, can sort of be analyzed in a way that would indicate that the softening might not be permanent. So it might indicate a good opportunity for investors. Now, those three cities are Tampa, Orlando, and Miami. I think Miami absolutely kind of fits into the template I'm talking about, which is, I think a lot of that is driven by the fact that there was so much news over the last year relating to Miami that really hit the luxury market, and I think that affected the average price. But I also think even down at the primary purchasing levels, the average price levels, we also saw that area get hit. So I would argue that those would be areas worth looking at more closely, simply because it may represent a opportunity for someone to jump in and be able to get a good property that would do well for renting. I'm a little bit less of a Miami guy for whatever reason, not real sure. Now, remember, I lived in Florida for a little while, just a little bit north of Miami. Never spent much time in Orlando, but I spent some time in Tampa and some time in Deerfield Beach, and had to do a lot of stuff in the Miami area. And I'm actually more of a fan of Tampa in terms of areas where I think you could get yourself more of a stable type of rental going. But Miami is also good. It blends an awful lot of stuff. There are an awful lot of universities down there, so that's something else to consider. And I'm always a sucker for cities that have a university to sort of like just round out the appeal of an area in terms of making it a good rental opportunity. Next on their key takeaways was mortgage rates fell in every metro on our list. Next, several metros saw substantial price gains during the second quarter when compared with the first quarter. Notable increases include Cleveland at 24%, Chicago at 18%, Pittsburgh and Cincinnati at 17%. If I'm not mistaken, there were some other records broken in Chicago in these first few quarters in terms of the number of murders. So I'm not sure I would be too... It kind of amazes me that we're even seeing that kind of growth there, given the press that Chicago's gotten lately. I think it's sticking in my mind because I ran across an article today that we're talking about 90 homicides in the city of Chicago just in the month of August. Obviously there's lots of stuff going on there relating to stuff in Chicago, but that was what stuck out in my mind. So if you live in Chicago, keep your head down. Next on the key takeaways, after a 15% increase in the second quarter, the median price of a single-family home in the San Francisco metro is $885,600, which is interesting. Now, again, this is one of those things that kind of creeps me out because I have access to the core data that I'm assuming these guys draw from relating to what the median is, what the average is, and if we in looking up that specific data. Now, it specifically says after a 15% increase in the second quarter, and they're talking about quarters, so I mean, I'm breaking this down by month, but even looking at it that way, their numbers just don't jive. What I'm seeing here for January, February, and March, I'm seeing in January, the median price in San Francisco was $955,000. In February, it was $1,026,000. In March, it was $920,000. So super high. In the next three quarters, it was in April, next 3 months, the next quarter. In April, it was $1,340,000. In May, it was $1,041,000. In June, it was $934,000. Remember, these are medians. So nowhere near what they're talking about. Big growth, obviously, in the second quarter from the first. And we're seeing in the new quarter, July was at $995,000 and August was at $971,000. So that stuff just kind of bugs me at the back of my brain when they share a median number that is clearly below, and I am reflecting exactly what they say. We're looking at the median price of single family homes only not in South San Francisco, but in the San Francisco metro. So they must be including some larger area outside of San Francisco. So we'd have to sort of, I guess, forgive them for that if they don't absolutely define what the metro area of San Francisco includes. But clearly, when people hear that, they're thinking San Francisco, right? So it's about 100,000 more, actually, than what they're reporting if you're thinking about in terms of San Francisco, which makes these numbers, frankly, even more creepy. So let's go ahead and jump in and talk about these areas and the average salary you need to be able to purchase here. Now, before we jump into that, let's first talk about nationally. The 30-year fixed rate mortgage nationally is about 3.73, and your monthly payment on average is $1,229 a month, and the median home price nationally is $240,700, and the salary that's needed is $52,699.17. And if we take a look at these metro areas, I guess we'll just start at the worst in terms of how expensive it is. And what's interesting is I think what you'll find, now remember, the last time we did an analysis, or the last time we looked at an article that discussed the numbers relating to the most attractive investment areas, remember there was like one California city on that list. This is probably about a month and a half ago. And none of it was the cities you've heard of. It was something like Redding or some city. And I think I remember thinking, wow, I should go take a look at Redding. And I was toying with doing a road trip up there just to take a look and see. But all of these areas that would seem to indicate, wow, this is where the expensive property is. This is where you want to be. It's not if you're thinking in terms of what's going to give you the biggest return on your investment. So don't let just that number be something that convinces you of where the hottest markets are. Does it indicate there's been a really hot growth over time? Yeah, but that's a regressive indicator, right? That tells you looking back what would have made a good decision. It doesn't tell you what is a good decision moving forward, and that's really where we want to be, right? We don't want to be looking backwards. We don't want to be looking in the rearview mirror. We want to try to look as much over the horizon as we possibly can. So let's go ahead and go to the number one most expensive metro on this list. No surprises, I think, here at all. San Francisco, with the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage at 3.77 right now. The percent change from the first quarter of 2016 was down 0.04% in terms of interest rate. And as we just talked about, the home median price is $885,600 according to them. And the percent change from the first quarter of 2016 is 14.83%, so almost 15%. And the monthly payment, everything, payment, interest, taxes, and insurance, a ridiculous $3,778.78. But what's even more ridiculous is if you look at the average rent people are paying. If you do a comparison, it's still nuts. And hopefully that rental market will never start to go down for folks who've made purchases in these markets recently. But the salary you need in the San Francisco area, $161,947.60. That is just mind-boggling. And what's going to blow your mind even more is how far behind San Francisco the next highest area is. And this really should be an indicator to you that buying in San Francisco right now just does not make a whole heck of a lot of sense. So many things are so out of whack, and so artificially so that. Particularly, and someone may ask, well, what do you mean by artificial? I mean, because of so many different things that are not more free market based, you have far less development going on in building new housing units, and that needs to happen in San Francisco for these problems to get solved. Given the politics in San Francisco, though, you can almost plan on the city always being decades behind on what the actual needs of the city are, but also that problems like this will not get solved anytime soon. But the flip side of that coin is you as a landlord are going to get royally slapped around in terms of, well, what are some of the things they've talked about? They're making rules about not being able to evict teachers, firefighters, policemen if they're not paying their rent, not being able to evict much of anybody without going through this process that can last months and months and months and months. There's definitely this sort of anti-anybody who's sort of doing their own business thing or involved in housing in some way that you're somehow making a profit off of. There definitely seems to be this desire to victimize folks who are in those positions. Next on our list is another California community, San Diego, with 30-year fixed-rate mortgages currently at 3.84%, which is down 0.07% from the first quarter of 2016. The median home price is $589,900, and that's a percent change from the first quarter of 6.42. The monthly payment, interest, taxes, and insurance there is $2,553.62 based on that average price. And the salary needed is $109,440.97. And while that's still pretty high, it's almost $60,000 less than you need to make in a year if you want to do the same thing in San Francisco. So at least you've got that going for you. Next on our list here is Los Angeles with a 3.74% interest rates for mortgages, down 0.16, so a much bigger jump, or a much bigger drop in terms of what they're charging for mortgages from the first quarter of 2016. Median home price is $480,000, where that's a 4.48% change from the first quarter of 2016. $2,148 will cover your mortgage payments, and you need to make $92,091 per year in order to jump into that marketplace. Next on our list is Boston with 3.67% for its 30-year mortgage. That's down 0.14%. Median home price $435,800. That's a 15.14% increase from the first quarter of 2016. Monthly payments on the mortgage, $2,042. You need to make $87,556. 2, 3, 4. Number 5 on our list, New York City, 3.7% interest rate on mortgages, down 0.17% from the first quarter of 2016. 395,400 is the median home price. Percent change from the first quarter of 2016 is 6.03. These numbers seem a little low for New York City. I don't know much about New York City. Whenever I think of New York City, I think of Manhattan Island, which I'm sure is a whole different beast. But anyway, $2,011 to make that monthly payment. $86,215 a year is what you need to make. Next on our list is Seattle, with one of the highest rates. In fact, the highest rate for the 30-year fixed mortgage. Not sure why that is. 3.9%. And that's down 0.12% from the first quarter of 2016. Median home price, $420,500. The percent change in that price from the first quarter of 2016 was 9.76%. $1,928 is what it's going to cost you per month to take care of that mortgage. And you need to make $82,670 per month to make that work for you. That was number 6 on our list. Number 7 is Washington with 3.7% fixed mortgage rate, down 0.18 from the first quarter of 2016. Median home price, $406,900. That's a percentage change of 10.45% since the first quarter of 2016. One thing that I'll suggest for you, I'm not going to cut down the rest of this list. It's getting a little bit long, but I am going to hit Miami and Tampa, because these are two areas where home prices have actually gone down, as we mentioned earlier, and may present an opportunity. So I wanted to give you the details for those. Now, jumping down our list a bit. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Number 11 on our list is Miami. With 3.76% 30-year fixed rate mortgage, that's down 0.17% from the first quarter of 2016. Median home price, $310,000. That's a negative point, so less than 1%, but a negative 0.86% from the first quarter of 2016. Monthly payments would be $1,519.48, and you'd need to be making $65,120 to make that work. And then if we jump down the list, let's see, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So a little bit further down the list at number 20 is Tampa with 3.86% for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. That is down 0.15% from the first quarter of 2016. Median home price, $199,900, and that's a 0.35% change from the first quarter of 2016. So again, under 1%. With the monthly payment for that mortgage being $1,047, and you would need a salary of $44,874 to make that fly. Those two just jump out at me as ones that might be ones you'd want to take a look at. In terms of any other just really standout numbers, just really big numbers, Chicago is seeing from the first quarter an 18.12% increase in the price of a property. That just blows me away. But I'll tell you, given what's going on in Chicago, the amount of ground truth you'd need to get, the amount of time you'd want to invest in absolutely knowing the ins and outs of what's going on there, and the areas that make sense to invest in, the areas that don't make sense to invest in. There's that fear barrier we were talking about before. But for me, from the standpoint of just risk versus reward, I'm just not sure that'd be something I'd want to jump in on. And then the other one that kind of jumps out at me is Cleveland. And I know bubkiss about Cleveland, but they saw a 24% increase in property values from the first quarter of 2016. And it's a relatively low barrier to entry in terms of getting into the marketplace. They've got 3.72% 30-year fixed rate mortgages. That percent change on that interest rate was down 0.14% from the first quarter of 2016. Median home price is $138,100. And again, it's up 24% since the first quarter. Monthly payment would be $803.46. Salary need would be $34,433. So use this as a tool. See if you can't figure out if areas near you or areas you're interested in might not make some sense from a basic standpoint in terms of growth and projected costs in terms of monthly payments for that PITI, but then also projections on how much money they need to make. Some of these numbers may make sense to you. You may say, wow, I could actually get involved in these given my current income. Now, the lowest one on the list that they have here is Pittsburgh, with $32,390 being the salary needed to jump into the marketplace. And they saw a 17% percentage change from the first quarter of 2016 in terms terms of median home prices. And their median home price is just a little bit over Cleveland, $140,500. So again, it might be an area for folks who are just looking to jump into the real estate game to take advantage of some areas where you can go in there. You've seen some growth. You want to look at the history and see what the trend is. What do you think is going to happen moving forward? Again, while looking at historical data is all well and good, what you should be doing is looking at it through the lens of what does this help me understand about what I can expect coming from this market moving forward, and use all these other tools that we've talked about like Zillow and Trulia to try to get an idea of where you think these different marketplaces are going to go. All right, folks, thanks again for being a part of the audience. You have no idea how much appreciation I have for folks who basically already are contributing their own time to this show by listening to it. I absolutely respect the most valuable asset we all have is time, and that you choose to spend a chunk of it with me every day. So thank you very much for doing that. Thanks for listening. I'll talk to you all next time.